Before the crowded church, a brutal truth cuts through the silence and destroys every dream in seconds. Publicly humiliated, she runs aimlessly, carrying only the pain and the weight of an unjust accusation. But when a stranger offers her not a romance, but a new place in his life, everything changes. And in that unexpected gesture, a connection is born, one that neither the past nor society can erase. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. Continuing. The late afternoon sun filtered through the stained glass. Windows of St. Michael's Cathedral in downtown Chicago, casting colorful patterns across the white marble floor. Emily Carson knelt at the altar, her hands trembling as they clutched her bouquet of white roses. The organ music swelled through the vaulted ceiling, and 300 guests watched from the polished wooden pews. This was supposed to be the happiest moment of her life, the culmination of a promise made when she was just 17 years old. Daniel Matthews stood beside her in his tailored suit, his jaw set in a way that made Emily's stomach twist with an unfamiliar unease. They had been promised to each other since high school, their families intertwined through business and old Chicago society connections. Everyone expected this union. Everyone had planned for it. Father O'Brien opened his worn Bible and began the traditional ceremony. Emily's mother dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief in the front row. Her father sat rigid, proud, his hands folded over the head of his cane. The Matthews family occupied the opposite side, equally formal, equally invested in this moment. But then, just as Father O'Brien asked if anyone objected to this union, Daniel cleared his throat. The sound echoed unnaturally loud in the sacred space. Emily turned to look at him confused and saw something she had never seen before in his eyes, cold determination mixed with something that looked almost like relief. "Father, I need to say something before we continue," Daniel announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the cathedral. Murmurs rippled through the congregation. Emily's breath caught in her throat. "Daniel, what are you doing?" she whispered, but he didn't look at her. "I cannot marry a woman who cannot give me heirs," he declared loudly, addressing not Emily but the hundreds of witnesses gathered there. "A medical professional has confirmed that Emily is incapable of bearing children. I cannot, in good conscience, bind myself to someone who cannot fulfill the most basic duty of a wife." The words hit Emily like physical blows. The bouquet slipped from her fingers and scattered roses across the altar steps. Gasps erupted from the pews. Her mother let out a small cry. The whispers began immediately, spreading like wildfire through the assembled guests. Emily felt the walls closing in around her. Every eye in that cathedral was on her now, pitying, judging, dissecting. The woman who couldn't have children, the defective bride, the girl who wasn't good enough. "That's not true," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never had any such diagnosis. Daniel, why are you doing this?" But he had already turned away, walking down the aisle with measured steps, leaving her kneeling there alone. His groomsmen followed awkwardly, uncertain. The guests erupted into full chaos, some standing, others whispering urgently to their neighbors. Emily's bridesmaids hovered uselessly, unsure whether to comfort her or give her space, unable to face the stares, the questions, the humiliation burning on every face around. Emily gathered what remained of her dignity and fled. She stumbled down a side aisle, her wedding dress catching on the pews, her veil trailing behind her like a ghost. She pushed through the heavy oak doors and found herself on the stone steps outside, where a small garden bordered the church property. There was a bench there, weathered and grey, half hidden by climbing roses. Emily collapsed onto it, her elaborate dress pooling around her like spilled milk. The sounds of confusion from inside the cathedral were muffled now, but she could still hear them. Everyone would be talking about her. Everyone would believe Daniel's lie. By tomorrow, all of Chicago's high society would know her as the woman rejected at the altar, the one who couldn't bear children. She didn't cry. The tears wouldn't come. She just sat there, staring at her hands, at the engagement ring that suddenly felt like a shackle, wondering how her entire life had collapsed in the span of 5 minutes. She didn't notice the man approaching until he spoke. "Excuse me, miss. Are you all right?" Emily looked up to find a tall man in an expensive charcoal suit standing a respectful distance away. He appeared to be in his late 30s, with dark hair touched with grey at the temples and kind eyes that held genuine concern. She had never seen him before. "Do I look all right?" she asked bitterly, then immediately regretted her tone. "I'm sorry, that was rude." "Given the circumstances, I think you're entitled to a little rudeness," he said gently. "I was inside. I heard what happened. My name is Michael Thornton. I had just dropped my daughters off at their catechism class in the parish hall when the ceremony was starting." Emily nodded dully. The name was vaguely familiar. She thought she might have seen it in the business section of the Tribune. "What he said in there," Michael continued carefully, "about you being unable to have children, the doctor he mentioned, was it Dr. Robert Harrison?" Emily frowned. "I don't know. He never told me he had consulted any doctor. I never had any diagnosis at all." Michael's expression darkened. "Dr. Harrison is my personal physician. He's one of the most ethical men I know. There's no way he would have given such a diagnosis without thorough examination, and there's absolutely no way he would have authorized someone to make it public like that. If Daniel Matthews used his name, he was lying." The words penetrated the fog of Emily's shock. "Why would he lie about something like that?" "Because he's a coward," Michael said bluntly. "He wanted out of the engagement but didn't have the courage to break it off honorably. So he created a scandal that would make you the villain instead of him. I'd bet anything he already has another life planned, probably with someone else." Emily felt something shift inside her, a tiny ember of anger beginning to glow beneath the humiliation. "He destroyed my reputation to save his own." "Yes, he did." They sat in silence for a moment, the reality of her situation settling around Emily like winter frost. She had nowhere to go. She couldn't face her parents, couldn't return to the society that would now only ever see her as damaged goods. Her entire future had been built around becoming Mrs. Daniel Matthews. Now she had nothing. Michael seemed to be wrestling with some decision. Finally, he spoke again. "This might sound strange coming from someone you just met, but I want to tell you something about my own situation. Maybe it will help you see that your life isn't over, just different than you planned." Michael sat down on the bench beside Emily, maintaining a respectful distance. "I lost my wife 2 years ago," he began quietly. "Rebecca passed away suddenly, and I was left alone with our 3 daughters. They're triplets, 8 years old now. Madison, Olivia, and Sophie." Emily looked at him with new understanding. She could see the pain etched in the lines around his eyes. "I thought I could manage everything," Michael continued. "I run Thornton Industries. We have offices in 12 states, thousands of employees. I'm used to solving problems, making decisions that affect millions of dollars, but raising 3 little girls who each lost their mother, that's something no amount of business experience prepared me for." He paused, watching a bird hop along the garden path. "Madison became the serious one overnight. She tries to run the household, tells the nannies what to do, makes sure her sisters eat breakfast. She's 8 years old and acts like she's 30. Olivia is the explosive one, all anger and impulse, getting into trouble at school because she doesn't know how to process what she's feeling, and Sophie lives in her imagination, creating fantasy worlds where her mother never left." Emily found herself drawn into his story despite her own pain. "They sound like they need more than a father who's always at board meetings." "Exactly," Michael said. "I failed them. We live in a penthouse on Lakeshore Drive with a view of the entire city, but it's not a home. It's just an expensive place where 3 sad little girls sleep. We have nannies who change every few months, housekeepers who keep everything spotless, drivers who take them wherever they need to go. But nobody really listens to them. Nobody sits on the edge of their beds at night when the nightmares come." He turned to face Emily directly. "I'm telling you this because I see in you someone who's been unjustly treated, someone who deserves better than what just happened in there. And I'm in a position to offer you something that might benefit us both." Emily's eyes widened. "What are you suggesting?" "Come live with us," Michael said simply. "Help me create a real home for my daughters, not as a nanny or a housekeeper, but as someone who can give them what I can't. Presence, attention, emotional stability. In exchange, I'll give you a place to rebuild your life away from the judgment and whispers of the people who just watched you get humiliated." "You don't even know me," Emily protested. "How can you make an offer like that to a complete stranger?" "Because sometimes the best decisions are the ones that come from pure instinct rather than calculation," Michael replied. "I've spent 2 years interviewing professionals, running background checks, reading credentials. None of them worked out because I was treating it like a business transaction instead of what it really is, finding someone who will genuinely care about my children. When I saw you on this bench, I didn't see a scandal. I saw someone who understands what it's like to have your life shattered." Emily looked down at her wedding dress, still pristine white despite everything that had happened. "Everyone will talk. They'll say terrible things about why you took me in." "Let them talk," Michael said firmly. "I stopped caring about Chicago society gossip when Rebecca died, and half the people at her funeral were more interested in networking than mourning. The only opinions that matter to me are my daughters. And if this doesn't work out, if your daughters hate me or if I can't handle it, then you leave, no hard feelings, and I'll make sure you have enough resources to start fresh somewhere else. But I think you're stronger than you realize, Emily Carson. A weaker woman would still be inside that church sobbing or running to her parents for rescue. You came out here alone to face it." Emily considered his offer. Her options were limited and bleak. She could go back to her parents' house on the North Shore where everyone would know the story by evening, where sympathetic looks and whispered conversations would follow her everywhere, where Daniel's lie would define her. Or she could take this stranger's bizarre but genuine offer and step into a completely different life. "If I do this," she said slowly, "I need you to understand something. I won't try to replace their mother. I can't, and I shouldn't." "I wouldn't want you to," Michael assured her. "Rebecca will always be their mother. But they need someone who can be present in their daily lives right now, someone who sees them as children who need care rather than responsibilities to be managed." Emily took a deep breath. Through the church doors, she could hear the confused murmur of guests, probably waiting to see if the wedding would somehow continue or if they should leave. Her parents would be looking for her soon, demanding explanations, trying to salvage something from this disaster. The thought of facing all of that made her physically ill. "All right," she said, surprised by her own voice. "I'll do it." Michael's expression showed relief, but not triumph. "My car is parked around the corner. We can leave now if you want." "Avoid the crowd." Emily stood up, her wedding dress rustling around her. She looked back at the cathedral one last time. Somewhere in there was the life she had thought she would live. The carefully planned future as Daniel Matthews' wife, the social events, the charity boards, the predictable trajectory of Chicago high society. That life had just been revealed as a lie. "I have nothing with me," she realized. "No clothes, no personal items. Everything is at my parents' house or already moved to the apartment Daniel and I were supposed to share." "We'll get you whatever you need," Michael said. "For now, just come as you are. If you were in Emily's place, would you have taken Michael's offer or returned to face your family? Tell us in the comments." They walked together to a black Mercedes parked discreetly on a side street. Michael opened the door for her, and Emily climbed in, her wedding dress barely fitting through the opening. As the car pulled away from the curb, she watched St. Michael's Cathedral recede in the side mirror. She was leaving behind everything she had known, everything she had planned for, stepping into complete uncertainty. The drive to Michael's penthouse took them through the heart of Chicago, past the gleaming towers of the Loop, along Lakeshore Drive where the evening sun turned Lake Michigan into liquid gold. Emily sat in silence, her mind trying to process the surreal turn her life had taken in less than an hour. When they arrived at the building, a doorman in a crisp uniform greeted Michael by name and didn't even blink at the sight of a woman in a wedding dress emerging from the car. The elevator was glass-walled, offering a stunning view of the city as they rose, 30 floors up. The penthouse door opened to reveal a space that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a panoramic view of Chicago's skyline. The furniture was modern and expensive, all clean lines and neutral colors. But scattered throughout this adult perfection were signs of the children who lived there. A pink backpack tossed on a white leather sofa, coloring books stacked on a glass coffee table, small sneakers lined up haphazardly by the door. "Girls," Michael called out, "come meet someone." 3 identical faces appeared from different doorways, and Emily felt her breath catch. The triplets were beautiful, with their father's dark hair and eyes that held far too much awareness for 8-year-olds, but their expressions were guarded, defensive. The tallest of the 3, or perhaps just the one who held herself with the most authority, stepped forward. "Who's she?" Madison asked, her tone more challenge than question. "This is Emily," Michael said gently. "She's going to be staying with us for a while, helping out around the house." "We don't need help," Madison stated flatly. "We have Mrs. Chen and Maria and Thomas. We're fine." Olivia, recognizable by the stubborn set of her jaw, crossed her arms. "Is she going to leave like the others?" Sophie hung back, silent, but her eyes were taking in every detail of Emily's unusual appearance. "Why are you wearing a wedding dress?" she asked softly. Emily knelt down, not caring that her dress pooled on the hardwood floor. "That's a complicated story," she said honestly. "But the short version is that my wedding didn't happen today, and your father was kind enough to offer me a place to stay while I figure out what comes next." "Did you get stood up?" Olivia asked, with the brutal honesty of childhood. "Something like that," Emily admitted. Madison's expression remained suspicious. "My mom used to be in charge of the house. We don't need someone new trying to do her job." "I'm not trying to do your mom's job," Emily said carefully. "Nobody could do that. But maybe I could learn from you how she did things. You could teach me what made your home feel like home." Something flickered in Madison's eyes, the first crack in her armor. "You want me to teach you?" "If you're willing," Emily said. "I don't know anything about this house or how things work here. I'd be grateful for your help." The calculation was visible on Madison's face, weighing this unexpected response against her predetermined rejection. Before she could answer, a woman in her 50s appeared from what Emily assumed was the kitchen. "Mr. Thornton, I didn't know you were bringing a guest," she said, clearly startled by Emily's appearance. "Mrs. Chen, this is Emily Carson. She'll be staying with us. Could you please prepare the guest room?" "Of course," Mrs. Chen said, though her expression showed clear confusion. Over the next few weeks, Emily discovered the reality behind Michael's description. The penthouse was indeed beautiful, but emotionally hollow. The triplets moved through their days like tiny robots following a programmed schedule. Breakfast at 7, school from 8 to 3, homework from 4 to 5, dinner at 6, bedtime at 8. Everything ran with mechanical precision, but there was no warmth, no spontaneity, no joy. Emily began making small changes. She asked Madison to show her how Rebecca had organized the linen closet, and together they refolded sheets while Madison talked about her mother's preference for lavender sachets. She sat with Olivia during homework time and didn't get upset when the girl deliberately gave wrong answers to test her. She joined Sophie in her imaginary worlds, playing along with elaborate tea parties where invisible guests were treated with utmost seriousness. Slowly, the apartment began to feel different. Emily started cooking instead of relying on catered meals, filling the space with the smell of fresh bread and homemade pasta sauce. She rearranged the living room so the girls could actually use it instead of treating it like a museum. She established new rituals, Sunday morning pancakes where everyone got to add their own toppings, bedtime stories read aloud with different voices for each character, impromptu dance parties in the kitchen while dinner cooked. Michael watched these transformations from the sidelines, often arriving home to find his daughters actually laughing. He would stand in the doorway of the living room, briefcase in hand, and just observe Emily braiding Sophie's hair while listening to Olivia's passionate explanation of why her teacher was wrong about fractions, with Madison adding helpful corrections. But not everyone was pleased with the changes. One Saturday afternoon, the building's security desk called up to announce a visitor. Michael's expression tightened when he heard the name. "Send her." "Up," he said with resignation. 5 minutes later, Victoria Matthews swept into the penthouse like a storm. Rebecca's older sister had always been a force of nature, a corporate attorney who ran her life with the same ruthless efficiency she brought to her cases. She had never offered to take in her nieces after Rebecca's death, citing her demanding career, but she had maintained a presence in their lives, showing up for birthday parties and holidays, always dressed impeccably and bringing expensive gifts that the girls rarely played with. Victoria's gaze landed on Emily, who was helping Sophie assemble a jigsaw puzzle on the coffee table, still wearing jeans and one of Michael's old Northwestern sweatshirts she had borrowed. "Michael, might I speak with you privately?" Victoria asked, her voice icy. "Anything you need to say can be said in front of Emily," Michael replied calmly. Victoria's perfectly made-up face hardened. "Very well. I've been hearing some interesting gossip about you taking in a woman who was jilted at the altar. I didn't believe it until now." Emily felt the triplets' eyes on her, sensing the tension. "Emily is helping with the girls," Michael said evenly. "It's working out." "Well, working out well?" Victoria's laugh was sharp. "You've installed a woman with a publicly destroyed reputation into the home where my sister's daughters live. Have you lost your mind?" "Watch your tone," Michael warned. But Victoria was just getting started. She turned to Emily directly. "I know exactly who you are, Miss Carson, the woman who couldn't even make it through her own wedding ceremony, the one declared incapable of bearing children in front of half of Chicago society. And now you're living here playing house with my nieces?" "Stop it," Madison said suddenly, stepping in front of Emily. "You don't talk to her like that." Victoria looked stunned. "Madison, honey, you don't understand. This woman, she makes us breakfast and remembers how we like our eggs," Olivia interrupted, moving to stand beside her sister. "She doesn't just pay people to take care of us." "She reads to us every night," Sophie added quietly, joining her sisters. "And she knows all of Mum's favorite songs." Emily felt tears prick her eyes as the three girls formed a protective line in front of her, facing down their aunt. Victoria's face flushed with anger and wounded pride. "Fine, if this is how you want to play it, Michael, I'll be back, with lawyers if necessary. These girls deserve better than some charity case playing mother." She left in a swirl of expensive perfume and barely contained rage. The door slammed behind her, and silence fell over the penthouse. That night, after the girls were asleep, Emily sat in the kitchen trying to calm her shaking hands. Michael brought her tea and sat across from her at the marble island. "I should leave," Emily said quietly. "I'm causing problems for you and the girls. Victoria was right about one thing. My reputation—" "Your reputation was built on a lie," Michael interrupted. "And I don't care what Victoria or anyone else thinks. What matters is what's happening in this home. My daughters defended you tonight. Do you know how significant that is? Madison hasn't let anyone new into her life since Rebecca died. Olivia actually does her homework without fighting. Sophie talks about real things instead of just her imaginary friends. You did that. But if she comes back with lawyers, let her try," Michael said firmly. Then his expression softened. "Emily, I didn't just bring you here to help with the girls. I've been thinking about this for weeks now. I want you to stay, permanently, as my wife." Emily's cup clattered against the saucer. "What?" "Not as a business arrangement or because of Victoria's threats," Michael continued, taking her hand. "Because somewhere between watching you teach Olivia long division and hearing you sing Sophie to sleep, I fell in love with you. You brought life back to this place. You brought life back to me." "Michael, we barely know each other. I know that you're kind and patient. I know you treat my daughters like they matter, not like obligations. I know you make me want to come home early from work just to hear what happened during the day. I know that when I imagine my future now, you're in it." He squeezed her hand gently. "I'm not asking you to love me back right now. I'm asking you to give us the chance to build something real together." Emily looked into his eyes and saw not pity or obligation, but genuine affection and hope. This man had given her shelter when she had nowhere to go. His daughters had defended her when she was attacked. This penthouse that had felt so cold and perfect when she first arrived now felt like home. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." The wedding was simple, nothing like the elaborate ceremony that had gone so wrong months before. They were married by a justice of the peace in a small ceremony room, with just the triplets as witnesses. Madison, Olivia, and Sophie wore matching dresses and stood proudly beside Emily, who wore a simple ivory dress that bore no resemblance to the elaborate gown from her first attempt at marriage. When the official asked if Michael took Emily to be his wife, he answered clearly and without hesitation, "I do." News of their marriage spread through Chicago society quickly. People talked, of course, but the narrative had shifted. Emily was no longer just the woman jilted at the altar. She was now Mrs. Michael Thornton, stepmother to the Thornton triplets, wife of one of Chicago's most respected businessmen. 3 months after the wedding, Emily started feeling unusual. She was constantly tired, nauseous in the mornings, and unable to finish her coffee. When the symptoms persisted, Michael insisted she see a doctor. Dr. Harrison, the same physician whose name Daniel had falsely invoked, examined her thoroughly. When he came back with the results, his face was gentle. "Mrs. Thornton, you're pregnant. About 8 weeks along." Emily stared at him in disbelief. "That's not possible. I was told—" "You were told a lie," Dr. Harrison said firmly. "I never gave any such diagnosis to anyone about you. Your reproductive system is perfectly healthy. There was never any medical reason you couldn't conceive." Emily broke down sobbing in the examination room, and they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of vindication, of joy, of rage at the cruelty of the lie that had defined her for so long. She was capable of bearing children. She always had been. Daniel had destroyed her publicly with a complete fabrication. When she told Michael, he held her close and let her cry until she had no tears left. Then he said quietly, "We need to set the record straight." The opportunity came sooner than expected. The Chicago Business Alliance was hosting its annual gala, a black tie affair where the city's elite gathered to network and be seen. Michael had a table as he did every year, but this time Emily would be there as his wife. She walked into the ballroom on Michael's arm, wearing a stunning emerald gown that accommodated her barely visible pregnancy. The triplets were at home with Mrs. Chen, probably still awake and waiting to hear all about it. Across the room, Emily spotted Daniel. He was with a woman she didn't recognize, someone blonde and laughing at whatever he was saying. He looked prosperous and confident, the picture of success. When Daniel saw Emily, his face went pale. He clearly hadn't expected her to be here, hadn't expected her to have recovered so thoroughly from his public humiliation of her. Emily didn't plan what happened next. She simply walked over to him with Michael steady beside her. "Hello, Daniel," she said calmly. "Emily?" he stammered. "I heard you got married. Congratulations." "Thank you," she said. "I wanted you to know something. I'm pregnant." The color drained entirely from Daniel's face. Around them, people had begun to notice the confrontation, conversations quieting. "That's wonderful," Daniel managed, but his voice was strangled. "It is wonderful," Emily agreed. "It's also proof that you lied. Dr. Harrison confirmed that I have never had any fertility issues. You made up that diagnosis to escape our engagement, because you were too much of a coward to simply break it off honestly." The silence around them was now complete. Dr. Harrison himself was standing nearby and stepped forward. "I can confirm that I never gave any such diagnosis," the doctor said clearly. "My name was used without my knowledge or permission to perpetrate a cruel falsehood." Daniel's new companion looked at him with dawning horror. Other guests were pulling out phones, undoubtedly already texting about what they were witnessing. The man who had publicly destroyed Emily's reputation was being exposed as a liar in front of the same society he had tried to impress. "I did what I had to do," Daniel said weakly. "You ruined someone's life to avoid an uncomfortable conversation," Michael said coldly. "That's not necessity. That's cowardice." Emily took Michael's hand. "I'm not here for an apology or revenge. I just wanted the truth known so no other woman suffers what you put me through. Goodbye, Daniel." They walked away together, leaving Daniel to face the whispers and stares that Emily had once endured. She felt lighter than she had in months. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. The triplets were thrilled about having a baby, sibling, each contributing in their own way. Madison researched proper nutrition for pregnant women and made sure Emily ate enough vegetables. Olivia threw herself into preparing the nursery, painting walls with carefully controlled enthusiasm. Sophie created elaborate welcome cards and wrote letters to the baby explaining all the important things about their family. When baby James Michael Thornton was born on a rainy October evening, the penthouse transformed once again. The triplets took turns holding their baby brother, each of them glowing with pride and protective love. Michael cradled his son with tears in his eyes, a man who had lost so much and found even more than he had lost. Years passed. The triplets grew into remarkable young women. Madison became a corporate attorney like her aunt, but with far more compassion. Olivia dedicated herself to social work in Chicago's underserved neighborhoods. Sophie became a teacher, specializing in helping children who had experienced loss. James grew up surrounded by the protective love of his sisters and the steady guidance of his parents. Emily and Michael watched their family flourish from that same penthouse, though it had been thoroughly transformed from the cold showcase it once was. Photos covered every surface. Artwork made by small hands decorated the walls, and the sound of laughter was more common than silence. One afternoon, the doorman called up to announce an unexpected visitor. A young woman asked to speak with the lady who was once left at the altar. Emily received her in the living room, where afternoon sun painted everything gold. The visitor was in her early 20s, eyes red from crying, hands shaking. "My fiancé called off our wedding last week," the young woman said. "He did it publicly, said I wasn't good enough for his family. Everyone's talking about it. I feel like my life is over." Emily sat beside her and took her hand, seeing in this stranger's pain an echo of her own long-ago trauma. "I understand exactly how you feel," she said gently, "and I can tell you with absolute certainty that your life is not over. Sometimes the worst day of your life is actually the first day of the life you were meant to live." She gestured to the photos on the walls, the evidence of the family she had built from the ashes of her humiliation. "The man who left me at the altar did me the greatest favor of my life. He freed me to find real love, real family, real purpose. Your ex-fiancé just did the same for you." The young woman looked around the room at the visible proof of hope and second chances. "How do I start over?" "One day at a time," Emily said. "One choice at a time, and by remembering that your worth isn't defined by someone else's inability to see it." As the sun set over Chicago that evening, Emily stood at the windows with Michael, watching the city lights begin to glow. In the next room, they could hear James playing piano while his sisters offered encouragement and teasing in equal measure. "Do you ever think about that day at the church?" Michael asked quietly. "Sometimes," Emily admitted, "but not with regret. That terrible day led me here to you, to this family. I wouldn't change any of it." Michael pulled her close. "Neither would I." In the end, Emily realized the story wasn't about the wedding that didn't happen or the lie that almost destroyed her. It was about the strength to accept help from a stranger, the courage to build something new from broken pieces, and the truth that sometimes our greatest blessings come disguised as our worst disasters. The woman who was once humiliated in front of hundreds had become a woman who helped others find their strength. The penthouse that was once a beautiful prison had become a home filled with love, and the day that seemed like an ending had actually been a beginning. Dear listeners, we hope Emily and Michael's story touched your heart. If you were moved, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what resonated with you most. Every day we bring you intense stories like this one, revealing the deepest side of the human soul. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode.